Got me on camera flexing. Nuggets. Now she's got blackmail material. In this video, we are starting our tile endeavors for our build. This is the first tile we've laid in the whole project and the only tile we have to lay other than the kitchen backsplash. This is gonna be the hardest stuff though, because we are in a shower, things are sloped, and we're using hex mosaic. 3-inch porcelain hex is what we chose for the whole floor in this bathroom, and in this video we're going from start to finish. Real quick before we get into tiling, throughout this entire project, we have come to realize that our mission going forward is going to be helping other people build out their dream home and homestead. That's why next year we are starting something a little bit new. It's called Buy Land Build Dreams, and we're launching our first product early in 2026. If you're planning a dream home build, renovation, or any other major home improvement project, it's made exactly for you and could save you a ton of time, energy, and money. But I want to say thank you to the people who are watching our weekly everyday videos like this one. And that's why we're giving away a special launch bonus with the product to those only who are on our email list. So head to masondixonacres.com or scan the QR code on screen if you're watching on a TV. That'll take you to our email sign up, and you'll be the only ones who get this bonus when we launch our product. Now let's get tiling.
First, let's talk about our tile selection. This took us quite a while. We had two main priorities. So we had to consider the fact that we have a center drain. So large format tile would require some type of relief cut in it. And then the second thing was that we wanted to minimize the amount of grout lines so that we would minimize the amount of cleaning we have to do in the future. We ultimately decided that we wanted a white hex, but it is very difficult to find a hex between the size of 2 inches and 5 inches. To us, the 2-inch tile was just too small. There was gonna be too many grout lines, and then the 5-inch would be too big for the slope, and we would have to put some sort of relief cut in there. We eventually found a 3.5-inch white matte tile from Wayfair, and it was listed as matte tile, so we purchased it, but once we received it and we put some water on it, we realized how slippery that this tile would be. It seemed a lot more glossy, which made us put the water on it. We also went ahead and grouted a few of them just to see if that would help with the traction that you would have with this tile, and ultimately decided that this was not going to work, especially for inside the shower. So we went back to the drawing board and back to Wayfair's website and eventually came across a 3-inch white hex tile, and this has a lot more texture to it. It's a little bit more of like a beigey white hex, so it's slightly off-white, but it's gonna work well because the tile that we're putting on the wall is actually more of a beige color. So this is gonna have less of a stark contrast with our wall tile than the 3.5-inch white matte tile. All of the tile that we chose for our bathroom, including the entire shower, both walls and floor, is porcelain tile. We really love the look of marble, but after asking some friends and family members and then also scouring the internet, we learned that marble is really, really hard to maintain. And our lifestyle is very active. We're always working on projects. And the last thing that we want to do is spend a lot of time cleaning and maintaining our shower. And so we decided on the porcelain. On the walls, we're going to have some of these Subway tiles. And then on the back wall, we're actually doing a large format tile to complement the side walls.
The very first step of our shower floor tile install is gonna be setting this drain grate here. We already have the bottom portion of it set. We did that in our shower waterproofing video. If you're curious, we have a whole video on how we did the liners, the walls, everything else. Then we put our Strata Heat mat down. Again, we have a whole nother video on just the radiant heat. Now the wear surface or the tile is finally ready to be installed. The key with this guy is trying to get it totally planar with the rest of the shower so that the tile kind of floats right over it. And then the stainless steel plate in the middle is a tile over plate. So we're tiling directly on this piece of metal, and that will be removable, but set right in the middle of this drain flange.
If you look really closely, you can tell there's kind of a bowl here at the center in the underlying shower pan, and that is to accommodate the thickness of this flange. So after this is installed, it should basically be a straight line from the slope of this pan all the way on to the top of this grate.
So I marked out where this thing is gonna sit, where I'll need thin set, and it is such a small amount that I think I'm just gonna do this when I start tiling. I don't really wanna have to let this dry and stuff. So I'll set that and basically just start tiling right on top so it's all kind of melted together. There's no cold joints in here or anything, which means the first thing I need to do is start cutting my tile to fit around this. We traced around that piece of steel on this sheet to give us this inside square. Then we went out 3/16 from all sides and drew this larger square, which will give us the edge of the field tile. The gap between the field and the drain plate is obviously where the water goes down. So we thought 3/16 was a good mix between big enough that it's not gonna clog up with hair and stuff, but small enough that it doesn't look ugly in the field of all these 1/8" grout joints. So I'm gonna cut the 7 tiles that we drew on out of the mosaic. We're gonna go down to the wet saw and see if we can figure out how to cut out just the gap that we need and do it as neatly as possible, because ugly drain grates in showers are one of my biggest pet peeves when the tile isn't cut perfectly. I'm a perfectionist, so that's what makes tile so difficult to me. No construction is perfect. There's tolerances in everything, but tile is just one of those things where you really notice a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch gap here or there. So we're gonna do the best we can. There she is. Check out my old school Harbor Freight tile saw, which I got on Marketplace like 5 years ago for $100. Look at that, they got the label scotch taped on. This thing is awesome though. All right, you just roll it. We got wheels here. Oh, don't tip it up too much. We got water in here. Just barely get it off the ground. And then once we get to the end, I'll pick it up. I think it's gonna be easiest to do these individually, so I'm just gonna cut them all out and we'll just do one tile at a time. It's probably gonna be a combo of the wet saw and the angle grinder with a diamond blade on it, because these are some weird cuts. We'll see, it's gonna be a learning experience. I've never done a drain like this for sure. And the last tile work I did was 5 years ago, so I'm basically starting fresh here. It erases the lines so quickly.
Oh my gosh, this is not good.
All right, there's our first one. Close enough.
Let it go.
All right, let the dry layout begin. First of all, I made a couple marks here that are both equidistant from this wall, and that is to get me a good square line, because I want to make sure the angle of this gets clocked perfectly, because however this thing is rotated is going to change the whole pattern of the whole floor if we want this square to stay perfect. So my idea is I made those 2 marks. I can throw this level between them, and the edge of the drain grate, the steel part anyway, you can't really see it, it's got to stay totally lined up with that straight edge. In theory, that should keep me straight to that wall, and then we just got to build the patterns around it. This is the remnant of what we cut out, and actually it's a good thing. Check this out. Got a nice healthy chip out of this one straight out of the box. That would have really been a bummer to get that installed permanently. We're gonna replace just this one before we lay that in there. And what I'm thinking is we do like basically the whole center strip here all around this. I gotta cut one more piece over here, but then we kind of start here and get this totally square. After we get that set, we'll go outwards from there. George, this is our little tile setter.
He's our helper. Are you helping or are you just getting kisses?
We're not going to talk about when he walked all over the tile earlier and messed it all up. Almost had round 2.
Okay. It's my job to keep you on your toes.
He almost sent one of these little guys down the drain. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Our method for laying the tile is going to be starting with this middle row and then continuing the rows outwards rather than continuing at a wall and then coming this way. We talked through it and think this is going to be the easiest way to keep everything aligned and straight. Where the 2 sheets of mosaic meet, you can tell when you're dry fitting that any slight angle in the tile can cause larger gaps between the tiles than what we want. So we're gonna have to be very careful about trying to keep that gap consistent. We have some spacers, I'm not sure if we're gonna use those, but that is one challenge that Alex ran into when he was using mosaic on his mom's floor. So we're gonna try to avoid any issues and hopefully get all of our gaps to match what comes from the factory. Alex is downstairs right now. He was cutting all of the pieces that go against the wall and I just heard thunder. So I'm not sure he's actually gonna be cutting any tile unless it's in the rain. And we officially have a scared dog. Georgie, it's okay. It's okay. We might not be tiling, we might be cuddling doggies now. It's okay. All right, I got the big baby and we are headed down to check on Alex. Oh my gosh, he's quite heavy with just one arm, so I'm gonna stop filming now. You're live. No rain yet. Oh.
There's a dog scratching at the door.
I know.
It is thundering its ass off out here and it's starting to sprinkle, so I'm probably not gonna have many cuts left. I've got to make 6 of these guys that goes up against the back wall, and it just so happens that against the curb, it's a cut like right here. So 6 of those little strips is all the waste that we're gonna generate from the shower, which is amazing. Quick note on this saw blade, this is actually for glass tile and it doesn't have any serrations like a normal tile blade does. It's just like a solid piece of steel with diamond coating on it. I don't think it's technically for ceramic tile, but I love how smoothly this thing cuts. I've got another blade for this saw that's more like the serrated edge normal saw blade, and it leaves such a rough cut and it vibrates all over the place, where this is like a dead smooth cut. It might be a little slower than the other one, but I love the edge it leaves, so that's what we're using. We've got about a third of this dry cut now, basically just the back edge, back corners, and one up here. And what I'm finding is really difficult is keeping the drain, the center drain here, rotated the right way. Like if this is just clocked a little bit off, it takes the whole pattern and shifts it. So you end up with like a 1/2 inch gap over here and it's tight over there. And so I'm realizing that the absolute most critical thing when we start the shower is getting the rotation of this drain set just right. And I'm trying to brainstorm like, what is the best way to do this so that I can successfully dry cut all this and then not worry about, you know, there being some sort of shift when I go to actually set it, and all of a sudden I end up with a gap on one side and it's tight over here and I'm having to recut tiles and stuff. I thought about doing like a laser or something. I can't really measure to just the wall because it's only 3.5 inch square, so I can't like really do that very accurately. So this idea came totally courtesy of Elena. She had the idea of making a template. So luckily we have some heavy duty triple wall cardboard from our couch delivery. I sort of did some measurements, and this is, I think, gonna be the closest way to get this totally centered and rotated correctly. I've just got it butted up against the walls, and when I look down, you know, it keeps it fairly square. So I think that's how we're gonna have to do it. It only took one cut marked with a pencil line to realize that that was not the way to go. A good fine point marker is really what you want. I really like these Pika markers, last quite a long time. They're not permanent enough to mess with the tile or leave a stain or anything that washes off super easy, but it lasts just long enough to give you a good guideline going through the tile saw. I talked up that glass blade earlier, but I was realizing just how slow it is, and I think it's starting to get dull and chip out the back edge of the tile when the blade exits. So I switched over to the good old reliable serrated one and remembered how incredibly fast that slices through this. It does leave a little bit of a jagged edge, but it's gonna get covered with other tile anyway. Before we start tiling, we can't forget to retest our resistance on the floor wire to make sure that something didn't get messed up. 45.4, I just checked the booklet, that's exactly what we read before, so we're good to tile. We're all stripped down and ready to go. We're gonna start with a small-ish batch of mortar to get that center stuff set. We don't wanna get too far ahead of ourselves with mixing mortar. We have done that before and made that mistake, so small batches for the win. It's my very scientific tomato sauce jar measuring cup. When we did the tub surround at my mom's, it was our first tile job ever. And we read the directions on the bag. It tells you 5.5 quarts to 50 pounds of thin set. So you just mix the whole thing up. Well, we mixed the whole bag up. Basically, we're forced to stay up tiling the whole night. And by the end of it, the whole bucket was basically hardened. We were digging in the bottom, trying to get what was left out. It was a nightmare. Since then, I've realized all you have to do is mix it in the right ratio and you can mix smaller batches. In this case, we're 3.6 parts powder, 1 part water. 3, 0.6. Water before powder keeps the powder from sticking in the corners of the bucket. It's actually a pretty good consistency right there. Let's let that slake for 10 minutes, come back and stir once more. I'm gonna start with having Elena tile our beautiful little center flower. So I'm gonna work on setting this little drain flange while you work on that.
But am I just putting it on that metal piece?
You are literally tiling this metal piece. Beautiful. Yep. I would probably back butter the tile.
Show me.
I mean, that actually seemed to work pretty decently. Set the stuff right in there. Trying to get as little thin set down the drain as possible. But we want to get this wire totally encapsulated. This should be the only time I need a 1/4 by 3/8 trowel for this floor.
If it's not perfectly centered on this metal thing, what happens?
Then our pattern shifts a little bit, but we can soak it up. She's going wild with the spacers over here.
Oh, how am I supposed to figure out that this...
I've never seen so many spacers on such a small little tile.
It's hard to keep it all exact.
I mean, just you eyeball it, that's all.
You asked me to do this.
Hey, you're doing it. I appreciate it.
Like, how much, like that much am I mushing it? Or am I mushing this too much?
For once, I get to be Inspector Gadget. I don't want to press this in totally until she's got that lined up because it really helps to see the plate edges when lining up with my template here. I'm just gonna give her a good squeeze. A little bit of squeeze out. It's kind of hard to see with the tile edges kind of over. That's about as good as we're gonna get it. Now we gotta go all the way around it like a flower petal. So the tricky part about these guys is it's kind of sitting in a bowl here. So we're gonna have to put a good bit of thin set in here to sort of build this up so that they're at the level of all the rest of the tiles and there's not a noticeable little bowl in the middle. This drain is really gonna be the trickiest part of the whole dang bathroom, I think. I think even the niches will be easier than this because we're using profiles. I'm trying to trowel this out, but I can't actually press down on it because I got a big thick bed here. It's a light comb. All right, let's see how it happens here. Just for curiosity's sake, I'm gonna pull this one up. Check the coverage on it. Full coverage. Decent.
What do you want me to do next?
Anyone you choose. Setting mosaics individually is just painstaking, but we're on the right track here.
How do you make sure you don't, like, stab the wire?
Don't stab the wire. But we're just gonna trowel over it. Fill in all of our little suction cups here. Key thing is getting this wire good and embedded in thin set because if it's not, it's gonna be in air and it won't dissipate heat.
Looks like the towel around the drain might be a little high.
That's okay. Can always go down. It's harder to make it come up. If you couldn't tell, this is a 1/4 by 3/16 V-notch trowel is what we're using for these little mosaics. Just try to keep the squeeze out down to a minimum because we've dealt with that before too. I used too large of a trowel my last tile project 5 years ago and I was cleaning out literally every single tile joint and it was horrible. So we had this thermal pack stuff that we could have put in the thin set to make it transfer heat better. The problem with that is it turns it black. So I did not want to risk black thin set showing through anywhere.
Did you want me to cut that stuff off? Too late now.
Yeah, too late. Whew. My back is already feeling this. And we haven't even laid the first full sheet yet. So I'm just gonna set it on this one and just sort of let it plop. Plop. See that lippage? We're gonna try to settle this boy down a little bit. Pretty much. Yeah, I can already tell with how tight this is and how open that side is that we're gonna have to do some trimming on some of our tiles here, I think. And there is the first row down. That was a lot easier said than done, but I think it's pretty square. We had to make some adjustments after getting everything set. I measured from the wall to the points over here, and there was like a 1/2 inch wider over there than it was up here. So I kind of like just shifted everything in place before it all dried. I was kind of pushing it in the middle there because that stuff had been sitting there for a while, but I think we pretty much got her all lined up. That's gonna be it for today. So I just troweled all the rest of the mortar flat into the mat, barely had anything left. So it was actually a pretty good guess there. The rest of the shower should be so much easier not having to deal with the drain. We can just fill in the rest of the pattern. So we will pick that back up tomorrow. All right, we're getting there. Time to mix up the last batch of mortar, but everything is looking pretty good so far. All the gaps are staying pretty consistent. It is so tough though around the center drain. I'm never doing a center drain again because that dip, it just messes with the pattern enough that you really have to pay attention when you're right around here to get yourself back on track. So linear drain all the way, but we're getting through it and we are ready for the last batch of mortar to finish this out. Also, I'm so glad we shifted that pattern a little bit. You can see the reveal against the wall is nice and even all the way up, same size tiles. If I hadn't made that shift, this whole thing would have been, and these would have been larger tiles over here than they were in the corner. There is a little bit of a bump right here where this wire splice is. I had Alana carve out the plastic, the 3 little suction cups that it was sitting in between because it wouldn't fit anyway. So there might be a little bit of a hump in the corner here, but I think it's gonna be all right. On videos I watched, I never saw people use spacers much with mosaic, but I think it really helps because your eye can really deceive you when you look at this stuff enough. It just sort of all blends together, but the spacer never lies. I started off using the little flooring tapping block to sort of push all these down, but I'm resorting to just pressing each one with my fingers and wiggling it into the thin set. The tapping block just got in the way with the spacers and everything, so this works. A little bit more precise, I think, too. And I just sort of like feel for lippage between the adjacent patterns here. On a big tile, you might use a self-leveling spacer to make sure you don't have any lippage. Not really an option for these little mosaics. Yeah, that one definitely wants to sit up a little bit, but we might just have to live with it. Yeah, that really doesn't want to sit down in there. We might have to put a weight on that or something. This tile's rocking a little bit on top of it. I think I might need to add more thin set under this whole thing to sort of float it all up. This tile is way out compared to the other one. You know what they say, get it right the first time. Yeah, the coverage was non-existent on that half anyway, because I could not press that down. Now I'm not scraping the bottom at all. I'm really getting some thickness on there. I'm not gonna push these too crazy hard because I don't want one sinking relative to the other. I find it's better to lay it a little bit close to the adjacent pattern and then use the spacers to push it out rather than vice versa. It's a lot harder to squeeze them together than it is to push them out. And I'm out of order. Classic. Have to mix up like a cup worth. The final countdown. We're so stinking close and it's 10 o'clock at night. This is what happens when you start tiling at like 5 p.m. I gotta say, I'm pretty surprised at how nicely the pattern is fitting together, considering my last try at Hex did not go so well. I'm serious though, if I did not rotate that pattern right at the beginning, I would have been totally screwed. My life would be so much harder right now. These would all have to be cut at an angle. It would have just been a nightmare. So that was a good game time decision right there. Like a glove. This tile is cured now. It's been a couple days. I think 24 hours though is the minimum time before grouting that you need to wait. But now I'm ready to grout it. So I'm gonna be using Spectralock 1. That's a Latacrete premix product. Spectralock 1 claims to have the same performance as epoxy grout without having to mix the two parts together and have that working time. Totally premix, pop the bucket open and start spreading. Using a standard black molded rubber float, 10 bucks at Home Depot. And then for cleaning, I have 2 buckets, kind of a first wash, second wash bucket, standard old sponge in both. Actually, this one is technically like a square edge grouting sponge, but I didn't have any extras. and then a microfiber cloth just in case I need it. I don't think I will. I've done pretty well with grout in the past with just 2 sponges, so should be good to go. This should be easy. We'll see how it works out. I've said that on almost all of our projects, and inevitably it never turns out, so we'll give it a shot. After this tile was fully cured, I went around and looked really closely at areas where the thin set squeezed up just a little bit too much and I didn't catch it while it was wet. Then I took a flathead screwdriver and just very carefully ground down the thin set in those spots just so we could get a full grout joint or close to it. I didn't want any of the thin set coming up through and peeking through our grout. So being that it's my first time using this particular type of grout, I'm gonna play it safe and just do a quarter of the shower at a time, just to get a grip on how this is gonna work. This is the color Fossil, which is kind of like a taupey gray. It's the best way I can explain it. We thought about white, but realized that was not gonna be a good idea in a shower floor where potential mildew can stain it very quickly. So we got a bunch of color samples. Laticrete actually will send them to anyone for free. They're all these little plastic grout samples that have kind of a texture on them, and they're sort of the width of grout lines, so you can put them right up against tiles. And that was really helpful in picking a color. I believe we are using white for the walls of the shower. First step, I'm just gonna take a damp sponge. Just dampen all of the surfaces here. I think that just helps the float slide a little bit easier. Very satisfying plop right there. These hex tiles just have so many joints. It's gonna take me a while to work it in, so I definitely think a quarter of the shower at a time is the most reasonable start. We did get matching sealant for this as well. It's called lattice sill. I think the sill is for silicone. And that is what we have to use at the floor to wall transitions. Anywhere there's a change of plane, you gotta use actual flexible sealant, not grout, because inevitably it will crack as the building moves over time and throughout the seasons. So wall to wall and wall to floor transitions, anywhere there's sort of a corner. Low angle to press it in, high angle to wipe it off. So we don't want to let that sit too long before we start to clean it off with the sponge. The rounded sponge is good for not digging into the joints too much. Curious to see how much of a haze this leaves. This is a pretty grippy tile. That was one of kind of our criteria for putting it in this shower. We did not want something that was glossy and it's gonna be real slippery when wet. So this has got a pretty decent matte texture to it. So the only thing that concerned me with that was, is grout gonna try to stick down in that matte texture, and is it gonna make some sort of haze that's gonna make this really hard to clean off? I'm not sure yet. I'm gonna hit this with my second wash sponge. Just doing one swipe at a time. We're gonna see how this works. Yeah, it's definitely holding on to some grout even after that. It's a lot different than a smooth tile would. Seems to be cleaning up pretty good now. I'm definitely getting less off of each pass than I did at the beginning. I'm gonna call that my first round of washes for this. If there is haze after this dries up a little bit more, maybe 45 an hour, I'll come back with something a little bit more abrasive maybe, or even maybe hit it with the microfiber. You can look at it, it looks kind of like a light gray. Is that what you're hoping?
It'll be okay.
It'll be okay.
It's what it is now.
It's in there now, not coming out. Wife approves, I'm in the clear. And there's what 1/4 of a shower looks like grouted, if you were wondering. It looks kind of odd. Let's throw some tunes on and finish this thing out. Plop. And there she is, a fully grouted shower. There is one last thing to do, however, and that is my drain. Just a little bit on our little piece of metal and we'll be ready to go. Well, it's easier said than done, doing this little thing. It's amazing how well the float pushes that grout into the cracks with just a little bit of pressure. It's kind of amazing. Do the old Mr. Miyagi. Wax on, wax off. Fast forward a few days, our grout is totally dry. We can actually walk on it now.
totally finished floor surface. This is awesome. Little bit of touch-up areas, like I noticed these little joints need to get filled in just a little bit more, but I think it actually turned out really well. The pattern pretty much worked out how we were hoping it would, nice and straight. As far as I can tell, there's no real, kind of misalignment between any of the hexes, which I'm actually shocked we were able to pull that off so well because that was so hard in the previous floor, but just goes to show with a good, well-prepared surface, anything's possible. Next up is the main floor. This should be easier, I think. Flatter, larger, but not as many critical areas. 2 of the 4 walls we don't really see. One's gonna be kind of behind the vanity and the toilet. One's up against the door. I'm gonna have a threshold molding there anyway. I don't have to be nearly as tight with the tolerances. Even on this wall here, we're gonna have 3/4 inch base trim coming down. I want it to look even, but it's not gonna be as tight as over on the shower where we have only 1/4 inch tile coming down. So let's get some tile laid out. We have some good news. I took measurements from this wall to like one of these arbitrary wires in here. Same thing over here. And what I found is these wires are almost dead parallel with both of these walls, which means the whole grid is pretty much spot on with the walls. And that makes me very happy because I can use the grid, similar to how I did in the shower, as a positioning indicator. The only thing left to check was how perpendicular this curb was to my walls. So I went ahead and just lined the points up with the outside edge of this wire right here, then laid the whole rest of the pattern going this way and checking this gap between the curb and each tile. It is pretty darn close. So that means this curb is very perpendicular to the walls, and I'm gonna go ahead and be able to use this grid to start laying everything out. The spot where the heat wire terminated in the shower is what caused trouble with the tile not sitting flat, so I wasn't gonna let that happen here on the main floor. There's no waterproofing membrane here though, so I could actually carve down through the mat and into the subfloor a little to make enough space for the wire to sit flat. This is gonna make life a lot easier. I'm gonna do what I did similar to the shower, where I do a couple rows in the middle or somewhere in the field, and then work my way out to each wall. That kind of establishes the pattern. And once you have those first couple rows, you really can't deviate much. Otherwise, the gaps in these hexes would get really wonky really quick. So you gotta get it right to start, and this is good that everything is square. Not that this really matters, but something else I eyeballed was that the runs of hex line up with the ones in the shower, at least eyeballing it anyway. No one would ever notice that except me, but hey, we're here, so why not? And I'm just gonna leave these full sheets right up against the curb so I can just cut a bunch of tiles in half, and those will be my infill pieces. I got my first row laid out here right to the edge of the line. I've measured between the wall, and it's nice and consistent, probably within 1/8 of an inch all the way down, so I can cut all those the same. And I was scrounging around in my scraps box and found a whole bunch of half tiles already cut. So I was able to find enough to fill in all of my voids over here, which is awesome. Didn't have to cut those by hand. And I'm learning one of the benefits of dry laying all the tile out is finding some high spots that you weren't quite expecting. Like under these solo tiles, right at the edge, I'm finding little bits that are just a little high, and I'm gonna have to try to bash them down with a hammer or something. Luckily, we have these hollow suction cups that I can kind of do that with. But that'll help achieve a nice, consistent reveal across the bottom here and keep some of these wonky tiles down. Like you can see how much this thing rocks up on the high spot. So we gotta fix that before we mix any adhesive up. Check this out. The corners just barely clear this wall. What are the odds that I don't have to cut any of these over here? All I have to do is fill in with a few little triangles. That would be awesome. I think I'm pretty well dry laid out here for at least like the first third of the floor. I've got all of the edge pieces along this back edge cut, and I got around the toilet, which was probably the next hardest thing to do. That actually was pretty easy with the wet saw.
So I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing up some mortar. I'm gonna go ahead and move my mixing operation downstairs to get it out of the way of all this tile I'm about to set. And we're gonna motor through this. I'm gonna try to get this floor done in 2 days. We're gonna see. I'm sure a pro could set this all in 1 day, but gosh, this mosaic is so tedious to like get it looking really, really good. I like to space it all. I've learned from the shower that I definitely want to use spacers in between all the sheets and get it looking really on point. So I'm gonna do the best I can today. Let's montage right on through it. Unless something goes wrong, then we'll stop and talk about it. All right, that's where I'm gonna call it for day one. I am at the end of a batch of mortar and it is dinner time. This is what happens when you start tiling at like 5:30 in the evening, and I am tired of being on my hands and knees for the day. So we're gonna go ahead and resume this tomorrow.
The very last bit of mortar I had, I just troweled flat in with the strata heat mat just to use it up. It was not enough to lay these last couple pieces of tile. But one thing I gotta make absolutely sure of before I leave this is this kind of stuff, these little boogers around the edges of our tile are all troweled completely flat and cleaned up. I have learned this lesson the hard way before, that if these are not completely clean, the tile next to it will not sit flat when you go to try to set it the next day. So you're gonna be chiseling that thin set out that dries in there.
So I'll make sure that those are completely cleaned out before I wash everything up, get some grub, get back at it in the morning. Well, check this out.
Not till after I laid the tile that I noticed it had a chip in it, but luckily I had just laid it and didn't catch it. So it's still pretty loose. Good chance to check coverage. Coverage is good. Got a new one right on tap.
It's getting pretty tight in here. Not a whole lot of working room left. Finally in the home stretch, tiling my way out. The very last tile, finally. Working myself out of the room was definitely harder. I had been starting at the middle and then going to the corners, so any of the gaps sort of worked their way out towards the edges, whereas finishing in the middle, any gaps that you have that are even like a 1/16 of an inch more than usual is gonna be noticeable right here in the middle where we're walking into the door. So I definitely didn't want that to happen. That's why I wanted to do this whole space at the end in one go so that all the tiles had a little bit of play in them. And in fact, I did need that. There was probably a 1/8 of an inch extra space here on one side, and I was able to pull that space from out underneath the vanity where you're never gonna see it, and it all is good to go. Something I like about using these spacers is just a sanity check to make sure that the gap is where you want it to be, because when you're just looking at all of these hexagons, your eyes play tricks on you, and it's not as easy as you think to just eyeball all the gaps and make sure that they're all perfect. Maybe someone who's done, 1 million square feet of this stuff could, but for me anyway, it was just a good sanity check to say like, okay, for sure, I know the gaps in between these two sheets is 1/8 of an inch all the way down. Give everything a nice firm squeeze. I'm gonna have to support these little edge guys a little bit because they're falling over the edge of my sheet. And I'm gonna do a threshold here, so I don't want them to be angled down too bad. So I'll probably just have to prop these up with a stick or something, shove some mortar underneath of them, and they'll be good to go. And that's all the leftover mortar we had from the entire floor, about a softball size. This bucket scoop was absolutely key for keeping a clean bucket. I was able to use this same bucket for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 different tiling days because I can cleanly scrape the sides of it, not only at the end of the workday when I'm cleaning up, but while I'm still tiling, I can be keeping the sides of the bucket from getting too much dried, crusty mortar on it. Very simple tool, but gosh, is it really handy when it comes to keeping your buckets clean. Notch trowels are just so big and awkward, it's sometimes tough to get them down into the bucket, and this just makes life a lot easier to get material up and out. I found a drywall knife is also very handy for scraping this, cleaning tools, and cleaning around all the little hex edges where the mortar got skinned over and I needed to redo it. The drywall knife was a lot easier than using the notch trowel for, I thought. Something else I kind of stumbled upon cleaning these knives is how tough this thin set is to get off if you've let it sit for like a full day of tiling. So what I started doing was every time I had to remix a batch of thin set, I would give these knives a scrape off as well to try to get some of this hardened residue off. That way at the end of the day, my life is so much easier cleaning a tool that only has, 3-hour mortar on it instead of like 5 or 6. It is just crazy how well this thin set sticks to like everything, metal, plastic, you name it. In contrast, something like drywall mud flakes off if you just look at it. I mentioned this in the heated floor video, but tile has always been intimidating for me. However, after this floor, I feel a lot more confident in it. And I think the main thing is just mixing the mortar in smaller batches. I don't know what the hell we were thinking before where we would mix a whole bag of mortar up in one batch and just race through it, and it caused so much stress. I don't know why the heck we thought that was a good idea. I think it was really honestly because there was just instructions on the bag for how to mix the whole bag and not instructions for how to mix a partial bag. That seems silly in hindsight, but I think that's actually what it was. So just having the floor all dry cut, laid out well, a good plan of action on how we're actually gonna lay the tiles out and everything, and mixing the mortar in smaller batches has really made this feel a lot more approachable. I'm glad we did the floor first because I think the shower is going to be harder doing it on the wall. We have some really large format tile coming up, 24 by 48. And then we also have some vertical subway as well, but it's one of those kind of hand formed tiles. I think it's called Zalige, where it's not like a smooth flat tile. There's some texture to it. So that might also present some challenges. There's niches to work around. So I'm glad I kind of cut my teeth on the floor before we move on to the walls. Before grouting this main floor, I wanted to deal with the walls of this curb on both the inside and outside so I can grout those at the same time. After some discussion with the boss, we mocked up a few samples and we decided we liked the hex coming up onto the walls of the curb. We thought about using like an accent tile from somewhere else in the shower, but thought that we just wanted to draw as little attention to the curb as possible, and the best way to do that, we think, is to keep the floor tile coming up onto the curb a little bit. So I ripped down some pieces. Unfortunately, it's just over the height of one tile, so there's some slivers, which was really difficult to cut. We'll prop it up on some wedges to give ourselves a little grout joint at the bottom there. Same deal on the inside, except this one we lucked out a little bit more. It's the height of just over half a tile, so with some grout joints, we're good with just cutting the tiles in half. And coincidentally, these also line up with a half tile on the inside. That was not planned. We started at the drain with this layout, so that's amazing that that just happened to fall on half a tile. Thought about putting some masking tape down, but we're just gonna wing this. I'm just gonna try to keep this in line with the pattern right below it. Every tile gets a wedge. All about the details. Saying goodbye to the last of the exposed heat wire. Gotta get this baby nice and encapsulated in thin set. Go ahead and do it on the top too while I'm at it. Might be a little bit messy, but yeah, we gotta push it in there.
And that is it for hex tile on this floor. Check out my little setup here to keep this wire pushed down into that groove. Got a little tripod set up with some wood scraps, 5-pound weight, and then this one is here to keep this tile from bulging out because the wire wants to push out this way too. So before this is fully cured, but cured enough to keep the wire down, I'll pull those little scraps out so they don't get stuck in there.
Everything on the curb is dry.
Turned out nicely. That wire is totally encapsulated in there. We are ready for some grout over here.
Same deal as grouting the shower floor. Got our Spectralock 1 in color Fossil. The only difference here is we actually have a change of plane. We're going from floor to, this is technically a small wall, so you're not allowed to use grout in this crack because these are more susceptible to movement relative to one another. Instead, use a color matched sealant. This is Lattisil in the same color Fossil. Really convenient that they offer color matched sealants, and this will allow that little bit of movement between planes. Wall to wall intersections get this as well, so these vertical corners. If you're like me, next time you go into a nice hotel that has a nice tiled shower, notice the vertical corners. They almost never use the sealant, and almost always there's cracks in that grout, and even worse, sometimes it's falling out of the corners because it's cracked so bad. It's because these two walls have shifted relative to one another, you know, throughout expansion and contraction in seasons, or people slamming doors on the other side. It's really hard for grout to stay in these vertical corners, so that's why TCNA recommends you use sealant here. Take a peek at that tiled shower or bathroom floor next time you're in a commercially tiled setting. I even think about this when I'm in like bathrooms of, you know, Starbucks or Chipotle's and stuff. It's terrible. But usually those contractors are in and out of there. They don't want to get the color match sealant. They just want to get the job done, and they put regular grout in those corners, which ends up cracking. So let's cue the grout montage and go from that to that. And would you look at that? That's all I got left from the bucket after the whole floor. Looking really good though. For the record, that's 3-inch hex, 84 square foot of it with 1/8-inch grout joints, one full 1-gallon pail of Spectralock to do the whole floor. Luckily, we have another one for the walls. It's all getting the same color. One really nice thing about picking tile and grout that are almost the same color and picking a matte finish tile as opposed to a gloss is it's very forgiving with the grout. Like, the hardest thing about this, I think, is keeping the haze off the top surface of the tile once it starts to dry. But when the grout and the tile are like almost the same color and the tile is matte, you can't really see any haze. You can just see a little bit of grit if you get the lighting just right. So as long as you make sure that's off, give it a good wipe just like you normally would. I haven't found a spot where I can see any leftover haze on any of this tile whatsoever. There probably is some, but I can't see it, so might as well not be there. It's time to both literally and figuratively cap off this bathroom floor with the cap on our shower curb here. So there's a number of different ways you can do this, but we just got our countertops templated and fabricated for this bathroom vanity, and we had enough left in our slab that we had enough to do this strip. So we got ours made out of quartz, same material as the countertop obviously, and all I'm gonna do is thin set this in place with the same thin set that all of the tile was put in with. I've already sort of dry mocked it up, put some lines on either side to let me know where it's gotta be when it's done. Now, just gonna thin set it up and stick it in. I mixed up just a wee bit of thin set here, just enough to do this curb. So as per usual, I'm gonna try keying it in on both substrates and then use my 1/4 by 3/8 trowel to put the ridges in on the curb. This only overhangs like 5/8 of an inch on either side, so I'm coming almost out to the corners, and I'll make sure to wipe off the underside after I stick it on, get all that squeeze out. Now this is quartz, but the back side of this is actually kind of a porous matte surface. It's only the top that gets polished to like a real smooth, shiny surface. So I think it should adhere just like any tile would, but that's why I'm gonna key it in just to make sure. All right, we're doing it. Whatever I do, I just can't break the piece of quartz. That wouldn't be good. This stuff's not as brittle as something like granite, but I saw the guys at the quartz facility just breaking it off by hitting it on the edge of a dumpster for their scrap pieces. Pieces very similar size to this, so. And this looks light. Holy smokes, is it heavy. This thing is really freaking heavy. Try to get it slid in roughly where it's gotta be. All right, now for the squeeze out. I'm actually glad I mixed this a little bit looser. Oh, you know what? I should pitch this. I almost forgot, this is inside of a shower, so I want the water to run off one end. I don't want it to be perfectly level if I can help it. Can't believe I forgot that. Push a little bit harder on the inside. Yep, that seemed to work. It's definitely pitched in now. It's not much at all, probably a 1/16 inch across this, but it is pitching towards the shower. That is a wrap on our bathroom tile floor project. This turned out awesome. We are so happy that we took our time in deciding on the tile, put the work and attention to detail in, laying it out correctly, getting the mosaic perfect. I really don't think I could have done any better if I tried to. So really happy with how this project turned out. Like I said earlier, if you're planning your dream home build, addition, or other major home improvement project, make sure to get on our email list, masondixonacres.com, or scan the QR code. We're launching our first major product in early 2026. It's exactly for you and could save you a boatload of time, energy, and money on your project. And we're giving a special launch bonus only to those people who are on the email list. So make sure you're on it. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.